Okay, we have a lot to cover here, so let's get through the intro quickly. Hello and welcome to the RPG Blender, where we give lesser played games and forgotten settings the roll the dice they deserve. I'm your host, Game Master George, and today I am finally jumping into a space I've wanted to spotlight for a long time: Kickstarter RPGs. Tabletop RPGs are a hugely booming area of the Kickstarter platform, but there is so much noise on the Kickstarter site, it can be hard to find what's right for you. Add in the fact that there's no dedicated role-playing game category, and it can be easy to miss something you might love. So, in what may be a recurring series, I want to look at a number of the Kickstarter TTRPG projects which have been launched recently. Give you a quick description of what they're about, some of my initial reactions, and maybe help you find a project worth your backing. I'll note, I will be skipping things like 3D printing files and dice. While they're cool, it's not something I can really provide much detail on, being unable to roll the dice or having experienced 3D printing. But searching STL or dice should help you find them easily enough. As well, I'll not be talking about 5e-centered projects. There may be some 5e options included, but this channel is meant to spotlight games outside of D&D, so those are the games I'll be looking at. Finally, while I've tried to get a lot of projects included here, I may have missed some. So if I did, drop a comment and let other people know. Maybe I'll even do a follow-up. I've talked too much and we have a lot to cover. Links will be in the description if you want to check out any of these games, and you'll find chapter marks if you're trying to find a specific game. Now, let's get started. Mechs in Motion is a tool to assist with running games of Lancer as real-time strategy instead of as a tactical turn-based game. Weird. So first, Lancer is a game about mechs and mech pilots. I don't personally have experience running it, however, from having a read-through, it does seem like a fairly complex system. That's not a bad thing. It appeals to the specific audience of fans of mechs and detailed tabletop skirmish games. That means what we have here is an additional complexity on top of an already complex system. That said, a large part of the funding is going to tools needed to make running this idea easier. If you've ever played Exalted 2nd Edition, it follows a similar idea to the tick system. Effectively, each action you take in combat takes a certain number of ticks, beats as the designer names them. This tracks when during the round your action completes. Adding a bit of unique perspective to this, you chart out your actions and then resolve them simultaneously. Everyone is maintaining their own beat tracker, then combining them to establish the movements through the turn. Then you can adjust your beat tracker in response to other actions you see people take, leading to a dynamic stream of actions and reactions throughout the round. This seems complicated to me, and there is surely a lot more to it than what's outlined here. I'd be interested in taking a look at it. It could be an interesting concept to explore in other games as well. This Kickstarter launched on February 20th and runs through March 17th. It's a very niche project, so if it shouldn't reach its goal, I'd like to see them expand the concept into a system-neutral framework you could adapt to whatever game you choose to run, and then consider relaunching. Attack from Space is a game of knights versus aliens. The game is built on the Lumen system, a rules-light approach to a combat RPG. Using just a few d6s, it aims for a true power fantasy, letting you feel like an epic combatant without much crunch needed. The game specifically sees players taking on the role of medieval knights fighting back an alien invasion, and I really don't need to say more. If the idea of knights fighting space aliens appeals to you, this is a game you should look into. And if it doesn't, there is nothing to convince you to change your mind here. The game wears what it is on its sleeve. The Kickstarter launched on February 21st and runs through March 16th. I'm intrigued by the setting idea, and the designers clearly put effort into this ridiculous concept. And the system is a solid one for a night of simple combat fun. But I can't see myself running it multiple times. It's not something that I would be able to justify including in my shelf. Freelancer's Guide is a sci-fi game based around being freelancers in a megacorp-controlled galaxy. Notably, it is card-based rather than dice. Players take the role of freelance agents, possibly working against the megacorps or taking lucrative missions from them. If you're familiar with cyberpunk settings like Shadowrun or Cyberpunk Red, take those concepts of the common man against the corporation and put it into space. The game itself works as a deck builder, when players can improve their deck as they grow. The deck is built out of standard playing cards, and when you need to make a check, you will take the card number and the modifier based on a suit, then add it to your skill modifier. In that way, this is a roll and add system with cards, so draw and add. Improvement comes from getting higher value cards swapped into your deck. The Kickstarter launched on February 22nd and runs through March 24th. Unfortunately, it seems unlikely to hit its goal at this rate, but perhaps there are some people out there who are looking for a card-based sci-fi adventure. Unfortunately, it's not something that I would be backing. Overworld is a monster manual zine, bringing the creatures of The Legend of Zelda to your tabletop game. With additions for 5e, Survive This, and a system-neutral version, you can bring monsters like the Ektite, Moglin, or Wizenrobe to your table. I will say that this is something you could always do on your own. You don't necessarily need this product to play a Zelda-themed game, but the preview in the Kickstarter does seem to be well thought out and designed. This Kickstarter launched on February 22nd and runs through March 15th. My biggest concern is that the project could be shut down if certain legal entities get involved, like a recent retro gaming dice Kickstarter was. That said, I have still backed this project. My love of Zelda and appreciation of the effort put in convinced me. Fantastic Geographic is a zine-style supplement of adventures, locations, creatures, and more meant to be able to be placed into your campaign. It has rules which are compatible with 5e and old-school games. There are a few mechanics detailed in the Kickstarter, so I can't say if this is truly meant for use in a wide variety of older systems, or only ones with a D&D base. I bring this up to mention that if you are producing a book of supplemental materials, it's helpful to provide examples of the content you're creating. As it stands, I can't tell how widely usable the content of this zine is, so I have a hard time justifying backing it. The concept of the project is based around exotic, unexplored locales, so expect strange monsters like birds, dragons, bird people, swamp cows, and platypus. To be fair, the anglerfish monster is pretty cool looking. The Kickstarter launched on February 22nd and runs through March 30th. I personally am not sold on it, due to the lack of samples and less than unique creatures depicted in the artwork. Astro Inferno is a grimdark TTRPG of epic violence and fantastic despair. You are playing as Death Singers, souls chosen by the higher and lower powers to bring salvation to the satanic legendary world remaining after the rapture of the Morning Star. Wow, that was a lot of words that mean very little to me. This post-apocalyptic world blends technology and myth into a twisted future. The system uses a roll under mechanic. Roll a d20 and try to get under a certain number. Succeeding by multiples of 5 allows for greater impact to the roll. There are also systems which allow for the players to have more narrative control. Enemies in combat make statements rather than attacks. They tell you what will happen when a certain timer expires, and you must find a way to prevent it with your own actions. With how easy death comes, there are also paths back to life, being brought back by your masters until your soul is too corrupted to continue. The Kickstarter launched on February 22nd and runs through March 27th, already being well funded. You'll find a quick play preview on their Kickstarter page, though it is still a work in progress. Between the interesting world and unique combat system, this is a definite back for me, and that Legendary Edition just looks so good. Zin Never Dies is a fantasy TTRPG inspired by Japanese animated films, fairy tale charm, and folklore darkness. Gods are real and can grant you real power, but they enjoy creating trouble. The main power, that of Zin, is one such curse bestowed upon the world. It allows for the reshaping of the world through influence over various towers of creation, opposed by spirits who wish things to remain as they are. Play as antlered humans, the diminutive masked, or literal slugs in armor, as you cope with your own curse of becoming an adventurer. The system offers a rare twist, where high rolls can be as bad as low. You aim for middle results to avoid both failure and overdoing it. The magic system Zin utilizes towers of influence rather than discrete spells. By investing into these powers, you gain greater control over a certain aspect of reality. The Kickstarter launched on February 22nd and runs through March 24th. You'll find a quick start guide as well as some additional interviews or play examples on the Kickstarter page. I love the aesthetic and very much want to play the armor slug, so this is a back for me. The NPC Tracker is an add-on for your tabletop game to assist with organizing and presenting NPCs to your group. The project consists of magnetic dry erase character cards with swappable portraits. The concept being that you can write out the character details, pick an appropriate portrait, then slap it on any magnetic surface to display to your players. While the idea is sound, there are, in my opinion, a couple of missteps. First, the idea's main selling point is the magnetic property to allow for easy swapping and display. This, however, renders the digital version of the project irrelevant, as it basically just becomes a few lines of a template with a few portraits created with another piece of software. If you were interested in the digital version and liked the art style, you may be better off simply getting the program they used, slated for release in the summer. My second issue is that there does not seem to be a simple blank character portrait. This means that your use of the product is limited by the portraits they choose to include. This is an easily fixable issue. All they need to do is include a few blank portraits to allow for artists to draw their own. But combined with the fact that they are pricing out portrait packs of different races quickly leads to this being an expensive game made if you want to make it truly usable. The Kickstarter launched on February 22nd and runs through March 17th. It is not a project for me, but I can see it having an audience. I do like their wanted posters though. Shame that they are, as of this recording, only available as an add-on unless you get the limited $185 reward tiers. Old School Essentials returns to Kickstarter with box sets of its classic fantasy and advanced fantasy lines. The game is based on the origin of the world's most popular role-playing game, seeking to return to a lighter rule set, relying more on GM improvisation to fill the gaps, rather than page upon page of rules minutia. Of note, most of the products included in the Kickstarter are new printings of existing works. So if you've already been investing in this line, you may have some of the products. However, for those looking to get into a classically inspired game, this serves as a jumping in point. You'll find a link to the basic rules on the Kickstarter page to review if you're on the fence about it. The Kickstarter launched on February 22nd and runs through March 30th. I will not be backing it myself, not out of any dislike for the system, but simply because my shelf has plenty of old school games already. It needs new blood. Darkest Days is a dark fantasy TTRPG where players play as resurrected heroes returned to save their realm. The game apparently focuses on combat, particularly boss encounters. Character creation begins with a background class, but you then receive pips, customization points, which you can spend to specialize in different areas. Fittingly, death is not always permanent. You are already resurrected heroes after all. If you die, you return to life at a safe place and deduct some of the health from your maximum. If it ever hits 0, you're unable to return to life. But it does seem likely that once you hit single-digit HP, you're likely to welcome the sweet embrace of permadeath. Combat uses attack and defense phases. All players start in the attack phase, with the monsters on defense. Once all players have taken their actions, the players move to defense while the monsters attack. Finally, you too can feel like a sports commentator. Aside from that, there is little mechanical information. You use a d20 and some d6s, so presumably it's a roll and add system, but this is not discussed on the page currently. The Kickstarter launched on February 23rd and runs through March 25th. I like the ideas presented here and would be interested in seeing more of it, but without some mechanical previews, I have a hard time backing it. I'll probably follow up with this one when it hits a release. Stories from L5 is a supplement of scenarios and campaigns for the Hardwired Island RPG. Hardwired Island is a retro-future cyberpunk RPG set on Grand Cross, a space station orbiting Earth in an alternate 2020. That line is taken directly from the Kickstarter because I have never heard of this game before. The base mechanics are roll and add using a base of 2d6 plus any modifiers to overcome the difficulty level. The setting has a very neon aesthetic, leaning into the very strange and colorful interests of unusual people. The 3 stories outlined run a wide gamut. You have running a cat cafe, street punk graffiti artists, and corporate conspiracy. This actually does a good job illustrating the diverse directions you could take this game, from the absurd rampaging cat robots to a tale of corporate employees stumbling into a dangerous conspiracy. The Kickstarter launched on February 23rd and runs through March 25th. While I'm not personally backing the project, it's because I haven't studied the system enough to justify backing a supplement. And without a hard copy currently available for the main core book, I'm less likely to try to pick it up to learn. But I will be following it, hoping for a print-on-demand version of the core at some point. Overisles is a campaign setting for the game Inspirisles, a system with a core that is intended to help teach sign language. I'm not sure how I missed the original run of that game, but that is amazing. The standard rolls for this system is 3d6 plus modifiers compared to either a difficulty of 11 or an opposing check, but I'll be honest, that's not the strength of the game. Instead, it is in the shaping system, using sign language taught by worms in order to wield the 4 elements. This is expanded in this project to feathering, where the sign language is used to ride your Nimbus, a large bird. The setting takes the adventure to the skies in the Nests, a floating archipelago of islands. Players must bond with their fledgling Nimbuses to fend off egg-stealing worms while preventing corruption of the glow from sending the nests plummeting to the ground. The Kickstarter launched on February 24th and runs through March 26th. I am thrilled by this game. I'm excited to bring this home to play with my kids when they get older, laying some foundations for learning sign language. Something I'm sad to say I never did. I can't say the setting is the most exciting, but I like the bones of the idea. Floating Sky Islands has a lot of potential, so this is a definite back from me. D6 Arkfort Etc is a pocket GM-less set of small RPGs based on Darkfort, the precursor to Borg. 3 standalone games are included, with each being tailored for solo play or with a small group. Roll to determine what you find in the next system is the simple D6 system. The 3 games are D6 Arkfort, a dark fantasy setting, Cyborg, which is the cyberpunk setting, and Feculence, which is a game meant to be played while on the toilet. I don't have anything else to say. If you want to know more, there is a link to play examples of Arkfort, not Feculence, thank God, on the Kickstarter page. The Kickstarter launched on February 24th and runs through March 10th. Get your toilet RPG while you still can. Yigderra, apologies if I'm pronouncing that wrong, is a... oh my god, more of this. These are the author's words, mind you. A whimsical trash-verse RPG based on Borg. For real, Borg attracts some weird designers. The players are denizens of a broken world, made of shards of various realities stitched together. The gods are dead, and you must take what you can find to fight back arcane horrors, be it a mop from the local corporate office or a chainsword. But with the broken nature of the world, nothing you find will last long. Being based on the Borg system, I'd expect to see semi or fully randomized character creation with the expectation of a short, brutal PC lifespan. Borg itself is easy to pick up after a read or two to get past the layout, so I see this filling a similar pick-up and play niche. The Kickstarter launched on February 25th and runs through March 11th. I love the source material, and though I've given some sidelong glances here at it, I like the theme. And I've backed this, so I look forward to throwing the magical carp at my players. What stalks the foggy cobbled streets is a zine meant to ease the creation of a gothic horror tabletop adventure. Channeling classic gothic themes, this 12-page zine is filled with random tables for monsters, villains, allies, and settings you can use to set up your horror game. Not much more to say here, a small book of random tables. The Kickstarter launched on February 25th and runs through March 11th. Random tables are always a good thing, but I have a hard time seeing gothic horror as something which can be channeled well through them. Gothic horror comes from the subversion of established laws of existence. When you use random generation, you lose the ability to build in those carefully planned moments of taking the understanding of the world and turning it inside out. In my opinion, that loses out on the main themes of Gothic horror. Urban Mages is, okay, I'm just gonna read this verbatim, a TTRPG where your magic can be anything you want, from fire to music to ice cream. The game sees players as mages in an urban fantasy setting. Each mage has a singular theme, which can be anything you desire, and all of their magic revolves around that theme. There are 17 spells in the game, and each will have elements of itself reflected by the theme. Examples from the page. A mirror mage might use teleport to travel between mirrors, while a Christmas mage teleports between chimneys or pine trees. This leads to them presenting themselves as a hugely varied system for magic, but I'm a bit confused on how it works, if there are only 17 spells with just variations based on theming. I'd love more detail on how this isn't just every mage knowing the same 17 spells with some flavor text added, but sadly no mechanics are discussed on the page. They do, however, claim a simple character creation system, 1d10 based system, and a collaborative setting creation. The Kickstarter launched on February 28th and runs through March 30th. While I am interested in any system that puts forward a strong, customizable magic system, the lack of mechanics being outlined does make me reluctant to back. After all, a great concept can be easily dragged down by lackluster mechanical structures. Liminal Space is a map-making and exploration game focusing on liminal spaces and strange places. The players are people trapped in one of these liminal spaces, the world you enter when you clip through the bounds of reality, the basis of so many creepypastas. Interestingly, this is a combat-free game that definitely fits the theme. When trapped in one of these strange places, you cannot fight the denizens. You can only try to escape. Instead of combat then, the game focuses on exploring this strange land, mapping it, and trying to find a way back home. The game sees players mapping out the space with graph paper, while the architect uses the random tables in the book to generate the world around them. We don't know much about the actual system at play here. However, that could be fine, as the big draw, I think, will be the random tables being used to create these spaces. Done right, these could easily be used for other games, potentially making this a very useful GM tool. The Kickstarter launched on February 28th and runs through March 30th. I am a big fan of random generators, so I view this game as primarily a weird space generator, with the actual player side being a bit of a bonus. I'm happy to add this to my toolkit as a backer. The Grand Tourney is a tournament expansion for Honor and for Glory, a knightly combat simulator RPG. Take the standard knightly warfare and move it to the fair. Jousting, the grand melee, wrestling, and then when you're done with all the physical tests, enjoy the feasting and pageantry. This supplement includes the rules for hosting such an event, as well as a module in the same vein. For Honor and for Glory, as a base game, is meant to simulate actual combat, with different weapons, shields, and armor having a greater effect than simply a damage die. Break shields, dent armor, or laugh off the blows of a tiny dagger. I'll admit, I don't know much about this system, so I can't talk in any detail about the mechanics. It seems to be D20 based, but beyond that, I cannot comment. The Kickstarter launched on February 28th and runs through March 30th. I'll be honest, hyper-simulationist combat like is described here doesn't appeal to me. I can see where the merit is for people who enjoy it, but it is simply not for me. Fragged Empire 2nd Edition is an updating of the post-apocalyptic game first kickstarted 10 years ago. In Fragged Empire, you play as a survivor of a galactic war between two vastly powerful alien civilizations. Post-war, your ragtag group will make their way from the safety of home to explore the newly reopened wider galaxy. inspirations of Firefly, Farscape, or Cowboy Bebop, which I should probably watch at some point. This second edition claims a streamlined system from first edition, as well as greatly expanded lore, the goal being a more intuitive play experience while increasing the depth of the world you explore. The game is a classless system, allowing complete customization of PC, equipment, and spaceships. It is a roll and add system, using 3d6 and comparing to a target value. Rolled 6s allow for extra effects. A simple system, I can't fault it. The Kickstarter launched on March 1st and runs through March 31st. I like everything this game is selling, but I can't back it from the way it's being sold. The game is split between 2 books for the core experience, Rulebook and Setting Guide, and getting a physical copy of both costs a minimum of about 150 Australian dollars, because they are selling them as separate options. This is the problem with splitting your core experience into 2 books. It doubles the cost for the consumer. For PDFs, it is less noticeable. But for an old dinosaur like myself who prefers a physical copy, you're asking us to spend the cost of 2 full games just to play yours. Does the book really need to be split in 2? Exalted sits at around the same price point for a single book. This nearly 700-page monstrosity of a book you can get for $60 on DriveThruRPG. You are charging 85 Australian dollars, or about 63 US dollars, for the add-on version of a hard copy of one of your 2 books. And how much game are we getting for this price? Each book is 204 pages. So altogether, the experience that you're charging 170 Australian dollars for the add-on cost is just over 400 pages long. Now, this is not meant to equate page length to value. Instead, it's meant to show that this game could have been a single book. The Lunar Exalted book is basically the same length as your 2 books combined. So why are they able to keep a single book while you need 2? I want to like your game. I know I would, and from how well your Kickstarter is doing, clearly many people do. But I just can't justify that cost. Wulfwald, I'm sure I pronounced that wrong, is a mythic Anglo-Saxon RPG meant to be compatible with various old-school revival games. Players take on the role of a wolf's head, an outcast or outlaw seeking to earn their way back into society. They are outside the protection of law, living a life of fear and mistrust. However, they can find purpose by banding together as a wolf pack for a noble warrior lord. Importantly, this is not a rules set. You will pick your old school inspired system of choice, and you can apply this game as a sort of overlay. The product itself is a box set of 4 booklets and a cloth map. Each booklet covers an aspect of the game: Wolf's Head, magic, campaign, and monsters. The Kickstarter launched on March 1st and runs through March 22nd. Despite the game falling into a design choice I despise, that of separating your rules across multiple books, at least they are all part of a set, like Paranoia Red Clearance Edition, rather than separate purchases like Dungeons & Dragons. It's not a product for me, but I do think the concept has merits. Alright, here's an interesting one. Quest Calendar for 2023, a page-a-day calendar where you will play through a space fantasy RPG throughout the year. Not much more to say than that. Do you want a small daily RPG fix? Pick your character and spend the next year with a little bit of RPG fun from your daily calendar. The Kickstarter launched on March 1st and runs through March 22nd. I'd be tempted to back it myself, but I knew full well that I would fall out of the daily habit by May at the latest. Okay, 2 products here. From the Phylactery, we have issue 4 of their zine, as well as a collected version which includes all 4 of their first issues. The Phylactery zine is an OSR-inspired collection of adventures, monsters, items, and more that you can pull into your old-school RPG of choice. Each zine comes with its own self-contained content from a wide variety of inspirations. The Omnibus collects the previous 3 zines and the 4th one being pledged for here, in addition to a significant amount of brand new content. So if you just want the content and don't care about the zine format, the Omnibus is all you need. The Kickstarter launched on March 1st and runs through March 22nd. I am tempted by the Omnibus and may end up backing it before the end of the window, but if you find yourself often running OSR games, it is likely of use for you. Roll and play sci-fi toolkits are, predictably, toolkits for building a sci-fi adventure. 2 books with hundreds of random tables to help flesh out your worlds. Using these random tables, you can flesh out any previously minor character or set piece which your players have decided must be very important, or use them in advance to seed your sandbox with missions and locales. Save your players from another massively empty sandbox. The tables are all system neutral, so you can use them with any sci-fi setting of your choice. There are 2 books in the set, one focusing on Game Master specific content, locations, missions, encounters, and one for characters, which could be useful to Game Master or player, backstories, gear, and factions. The Kickstarter launched on March 1st and runs through March 31st. I love random tables. They serve as a fantastic tool for any Game Master, but especially as something to help out new GMs. I won't be backing it, but that is only because my group tends not to play many sci-fi games, much to my chagrin. Next up we have, are we serious? Pirate Borg. If you can't guess, it is a hack of Morkborg into a pirate theme. That makes 3 Morkborg related games on this list. A scurvy-ridden, rules-light, art-heavy tabletop RPG. Rum-soaked historical fantasy horror. Grab your cutlass and flintlock and fight back against the horrors of the mysterious deep. If you saw Morkborg and thought, wow, this dark, brutal system would be great for pirates, then this game is just what you're looking for. But they do say the approach to this game was to make a toolkit as much as a game, so the tables can be hacked for use with any tabletop game. Yes, even that one! The Kickstarter launched on March 1st and runs through March 31st. Now, I've joked about it being yet another Morkborg hack, but I actually think this is a very good fit for the system. I may still back it before the end of the Kickstarter, but a pirate game is something that might hit my table once, so it's hard to justify the spend. Shiver Gothic is a return to the Shiver system, this time using it to create tales of Gothic horror. Shiver was a game inspired by the horror tales of pulp novels, scary movies, and TV shows. The system was fairly simple, using custom D6s and D8s to track successes. You could of course use normal dice, but their custom dice were so pretty. This new campaign brings 2 new settings into this world, bringing the game into a more somber Gothic tale. There are rules adjustments to the core system, as well as 2 full campaigns, one taking place in the city of Spireholm, and one in the hidden underground city of Dregstone. But in addition to these stories, you'll find new archetypes themed around being the monster instead of the human. The Kickstarter launched on March 1st and runs through March 31st. I love the core game, and I'm currently planning on taking a deeper look at it in the future, so hey, make sure you subscribe to know when that happens. So I am very pleased to back this as well. Despite being a coward in my media consumption, I love horror games, in particular Gothic horror. Oh god, that was a lot. Looking at a 30-minute video, I'm guessing, but I want to help bring attention to more non-D&D projects, so it's worth the time. If you want to see more Kickstarter roundups, vote with your likes. And if you have any opinions on these projects or know of any I missed, be sure to drop a comment. There were a lot of good projects here, and just because one wasn't perfect for me doesn't mean it isn't something that you'll enjoy. So ignore me as you see fit. If you feel so inclined to support the channel, I'd greatly appreciate a sub. We've come a long way from my first video series on paranoia, and I hope to keep making useful content. I'm exhausted now, the baby's waking up, so thank you for tuning in. And remember, there's gaming outside the Forgotten Realms.